Alrighty, welcome to Daydreaming Out Loud. I am your host. This is my channel. You could have never told me in a million years that I'd be saying that, but here we are, because life will carry you all kinds of places, especially when you have a daydreaming practice like me. This space that we're in is a personal practice that I decided to bring out into the public because it just felt like we needed a space like this. Daydreaming Out Loud is about imagining the world that we want to live in and practicing being the version of ourselves who can help to create that world, right? Like, when I think about what is happening right now, and not even just right now, just everything we see started as a thought, an idea in someone's mind. And so for me, daydreaming is about claiming and prioritizing the space where those sparks can occur, those sparks of inspiration that turn into ideas, that then turn into inventions, that turn into experiences that we can all share and enjoy. Those start with tiny moments of reflection. So claiming this space and prioritizing this space is a wellness practice, but it's also a revolutionary practice, right? In a world, again, where all the things that are happening right now, there's the chaos, there's the confusion, there's the madness. And all of that really wants to kind of rob us of our attention, our presence, right? It wants us to constantly have a sense of urgency around everything, and to feel grounded can be like a luxury, right? And I don't think that it should be. I think that it's a birthright. And so claiming this space, prioritizing this space, having this practice, sharing this practice is not only for my well-being, but it is also part of my liberation, right? From systems and structures that want to rob us of this beautiful space where we can imagine and practice being and creating what it is we see for ourselves. So here we slow down, here we listen inward, here we are really allowing our imagination to become the bridge between where we are today and where we want to be as we move forward. And the theme for today is welcoming the fire. Now, I have to say that when I was thinking about and preparing for this session, I was starting with, it's springtime, we're coming up on spring, and I thought, we should talk about bloom and birth and newness and all of these things, right? Alive. And that was cute. right? Like the idea for that was really cute. But the reality is that in my personal practice, I started to really become aware of an anger that's simmering beneath the surface. And it started to show up in different ways that I started to become aware of. And so as I was connecting with folks and checking in and being in community and all the things, right? One of my commitments when I am present with people is to tell the truth, right? To be honest. When people say, "How are you?" I don't want to, this is a practice that I adopted in the pandemic when we were in the height of it all. And, everybody would be like checking in, "How you doing?" And I really started to use that as an opportunity to genuinely take a moment to reflect and ask myself, how am I? How do I feel? What do I need? And then to tell the truth and create space for others to tell the truth as well. So this is a practice that I adopted really intentionally during the pandemic and have carried on since then, to just check in with myself and tell the truth when I'm in community and folks ask me, "How you been? What's been going on?" I want to say what's really real. And the thing that kept coming up is this anger, right? Like this anger that I'm carrying. And every time I would say it out loud, it was reflected back to me, right? People like, "Me too. I have that. I'm feeling that. I get that. I relate to that." And as I continue to dive deeper into the conversation, what I was also realizing is that not a lot of us have a space where we can really safely express that, right? For a number of reasons. And we'll talk about a few of those, but for a number of reasons. And so I thought, you know what? It feels like the right thing to do. As a creative, as an artist, one of the things that I have committed to as one of my core creative values is honesty. That my art will be honest. Whatever I share, whatever I put out into the world, it will tell the truth. And right now, the truth is I am, and a lot of us are, mad, angry, enraged, infuriated. Whether it's because of things that are happening in our personal lives or things that are happening in the political landscape, things that are happening, globally, just there's a lot. There's a lot to be mad about. Shout out to Solange on that, right? Like there's a lot to be mad about. So I wanted to create a space for us today to be able to transmute that, to be able to acknowledge our anger, to accept it, which again, we're going to talk in a moment about. Sometimes we have a hard time with that. And then to ultimately transmute it, right, into something that is not just reactive, but that is creative, right? Because, most of us don't give ourselves permission to access or even acknowledge our anger because we're afraid of how it's going to show up. We're afraid of, if we allow ourselves to acknowledge what we feel and we really and truly embody that, what does that mean about how we're going to show up, how we're going to act? And a lot of the behaviors that we tend to associate with anger, right? Again, the reactiveness, the outburst, those things are not socially acceptable. They're not necessarily aligned with who we are, how we see ourselves, right? Like we don't want to be explosive. It's not always appropriate to be explosive. Sometimes it is, but not always, right? And so, again, what was coming up in these conversations is that not a lot of folks have the space, or not a lot of folks have given themselves permission to fully be present with their anger, their rage, and certainly not to embody or express it. And so I specifically call it welcoming the fire because I wanted to bring the energy that says your rage, your anger is welcome here. It is not shame, it's not taboo, it's not something that you need to deny, minimize, or hide. It is 100% welcome here. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about why, right? And so before we get into the why, I want to share this. I want to share this clip. This is from Insecure, season 5, episode 6. And it's a very funny clip. So I'll share it and then we'll get into a little bit more about welcoming the fire.
Fuck them kids!
Elijah!
What the hell is wrong with you? You too, bitch!
Issa, what the fuck?
You want some too?
I walk around like that bitch.
Oh, Issa. If you are familiar with Issa Rae and her work, then you know it is quite common for her to say the quiet parts out loud, right? Like the intrusive thoughts, the awkward behaviors, the honest opinions and reflections. She is so great at capturing those in her writing of shows and movies and all the things that she does. And that clip is something that stood out to me immediately when I thought about this session, because obviously you're not gonna, shoot a baby across a hospital, or drop kick a woman into a hamper. But the sentiment, the emotion, the pain, the frustration, everything that she was feeling as a result of what was going on in her relationship to Lawrence, who's the child's father. And if you didn't watch the show, you should definitely check it out. But all of that, when you think about all of that, then you understand she didn't actually do that. That was really just kind of her putting an intrusive thought on screen. And it's that, right? I think that's the reason why a lot of us hide our anger, because we assume it's going to show up in the types of behaviors that are frowned upon, that are not becoming, that again don't necessarily reflect the truth of who we believe we are and how we want to show up in the world, right? And so we go from, see, the sort of like, okay, well, I can't do that, so then the alternative then for many folks becomes to mask it, right? To soften the anger, to swallow the rage, to kind of play nice and agreeable, right? Be quiet. There's this phrase, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I remixed that a long time ago, right? If you don't have anything nice to say, find a nice way to say it anyway, right? Because I'm not a fan of swallowing how we feel in the name of tiptoeing around everybody else's feelings. And again, this doesn't mean that we have permission to be reactive, to lash out, or be, destructive necessarily. Although again, there is a place for that. I tell people all the time, when you want to remodel something, the very first phase is demolition. So there is a place for destructiveness. There is a place for destroying and dismantling what already exists, in an effort to build something new. But it has to be in an effort to build something new, right? So if we're just being destructive for our own relief, just to get it out because we don't want to carry it, it's not necessarily helpful or useful. And I think those are the moments that we are trying to avoid when we quiet our rage. But again, what I'm hoping to create in this space is an opportunity for us to reframe that, to think about it differently, and to feel much more open to the idea of really being in contact with our anger and thinking about how we can use it to create the experiences in the world that we want to have, right? And so that's especially true. I think this need to mute or censor ourselves is especially true for people who have learned through experience, right, interactions, that expressing your anger could make you a target, right? Like that becomes like an excuse for other people to view you as unsafe or threatening, and everything that comes with that. And so it robs us of our humanity when we don't get to feel our anger and our rage, especially when it's justified, right? Especially when it's valid as a result of the things that we're going through. When we don't feel like we have permission to really feel and own that, it robs us of a piece of our humanity. So, instead of acknowledging the fire, instead of honoring it, we bury it, right? And that kind of signifies that anger is an issue. That anger is a problem, right? Like that if I feel this way, something's wrong with me. And that's just, again, not true. And I think we all intellectually know that. But when we experience the rage, when it shows up in our bodies as a fireball in our chest, or as a warmth in our belly, or as tightness in our muscles, or, our fists are clenched and our jaws are tight, like when the anger shows up, sometimes it can be so intense that we are afraid of it, and we do tell ourselves we have to quiet it down, because we are, maybe some ways, because we haven't all learned how to transmute and use it, we are sometimes afraid of what might happen if we let it go. So Today, I want to remind us that anger is not a problem. It is simply information. And it's like every other emotion, right? Every emotion is just information. It's just trying to tell you something. And anger is usually signaling that you feel devalued, disrespected, or otherwise dishonored, right? And when you understand that that's what anger is communicating, and it helps you assess what's going on that created that feeling or that led to that story, then you are empowered to think about how to move and again use that to create something different, right? So the question is not whether or not we have permission to feel our anger. The question is, what do we do with it when we do? Right? Because it's not the anger that is bad. It can be the behavior if we don't learn how to harness that energy and direct it towards something useful. So, you know, this is like everything, right? This is everything. Fire, the fire that comes with our rage is like everything else, right? Like it can either burn a house down or it can keep the house warm, right? And it's again about how you use it. So today we're going to imagine what it might feel like to acknowledge our fire, to accept it, and to activate it in ways that help us build something new. So, before we get into our visualization, meditation, daydreaming, all the things that we're going to do, I like to share an affirmation that I say to and with myself every day. And if at the end of this affirmation it resonates, it feels true for you, then I invite you to just give a quick amen, ashe, and so it is, whatever feels like your affirming statement or declaration. And so I would like to begin by sharing that with you first and foremost. Take a deep breath in and exhale. My existence is a physical manifestation of a divine intention. Everything I think, everything I say, everything I do, and everything I am is a singular expression of an infinite source. I am an ever-evolving emanation of the creative genius that is God. I embody the deepest truth, the highest wisdom, and the grandest love. And again, if that resonates with you, amen, ashe, and so be it. You can just drop that in the comments. And now I'm going to invite you to use your voice, right, to speak up. Part of embracing and welcoming the fire is then using that to speak your truth. Not to swallow it, not to minimize it, not to deny it, not to ignore it, but to understand it and then communicate it and express it in a way that will help others understand as well. Because part of what we're doing here is building the muscle to be in community with one another, right? And being in community should not require us to snuff out our fire. But it does require us to navigate that fire responsibly. So I want to invite you now to use your voice to speak your truth. And I'm going to share an affirmation, or a series of affirmations, I should say. And so we'll do like a crawling response. I'll say it out loud, and then I'll leave some space for you to say it to yourself. You can say it out loud too if you want. So again, I want to invite you to take a deep breath in and exhale. Place your hands somewhere that feels grounding for you. So maybe that's on your belly, maybe that's on your heart, maybe that's in your lap, maybe it's down by your sides, whatever feels right and true for you. Take a moment to place your hands there and just make contact with your own body, with your own physical presence in this moment. And now I'm going to invite you to repeat after me. I trust myself. I listen to my inner knowing. My emotions carry wisdom. My anger reveals what matters to me. My fire is not something to fear. My fire is energy. My fire is clarity. And my fire is power. I honor the truth inside of me, and I use it to build the world that I want to live in. Take one more deep breath. Inhale. And exhale. Now we're going to begin to settle in for this visualization. That was just me kind of setting the tone, settling in. So whatever you need to get comfortable, I'm going to guide you through this visualization, this session. I really want you to check in with yourself. Notice what comes up as you call these visions into your mind. Notice what sensations you experience in your body. And notice them without judgment. You're just observing. You don't have to make meaning. Not yet. The first step is to just be present with what is. Before you figure out what to do with it or what it means, just being present with what is. And so the first part of this is going to be that. You don't have to force any imagery. Just allow whatever comes to come. I want you to stay open and observant. And the invitation is presence. If it feels safe and comfortable for you to do so wherever you are, I invite you to close your eyes. If not, then simply soften your gaze. Find something to focus on. So, taking a deep breath in and out. And again, deep breath in and out. Notice your body settling into this moment. Again, you are not judging, you are simply observing. Feel the surface beneath you, wherever you are sitting, standing, or laying down. Take a moment to appreciate the support of that surface beneath you. Now, imagine that somewhere inside of your body, there is a small spark. That spark may be in your chest, maybe it's in your belly, maybe it's in your throat, maybe it's in your hands, maybe it's somewhere else entirely. You don't have to see it perfectly, just sense the spark within. This spark, it represents your truth. It is your instincts, your deep knowing about who you are. And as you focus on this spark, I want you to see it begin to glow slightly brighter than it was before. Not aggressive, not overwhelming, just a bit brighter. Steady, like a flame. As this spark glows, it begins to illuminate things inside of you. Experiences you've had, beliefs you hold. Maybe it's illuminating moments where you felt like something was unfair. And in those moments, you may have stayed silent, even though something in you said, this isn't right. Moments where you chose to shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. Notice what memories or scenes arise. And again, there's no judgment. You're simply calling these scenes into your mind to witness them, to pause and be present with the feeling and the energy that is created. And as you see that spark, imagine it grows now into a small flame. And again, it's not chaotic, it's not out of control, but it is strong and steady. Hold the vision of that flame. It's alive and full of energy. This flame is your fire. It is your passion. It is your clarity. It is your anger. Notice what it feels like to simply allow that fire to exist. You're not snuffing it out. Maybe it feels like relief to acknowledge this truth. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable. Maybe it's stirring up some energy. Again, just notice. How does your fire feel? Now I want you to take that fire and imagine that it is burning away the stories, experiences, and beliefs that you tried to put out the flames with, and instead use that fire to burn those stories, experiences, and beliefs, to burn them away. Those old expectations, other people's projections of who and how you should be. Take that fire and with a slow burn, allow those things to just burn to ashes. The belief that you have to stay small. Watch it dissolve in the fire. Not violently, just naturally. Like dry leaves that are turning into ash. Let that fire burn away everything that tried to snuff it out. Let it refine and purify your truth. The thing that you know let that be what remains. What truths are still standing about who you are, about what you get to do, and about the world that we get to live in? What feels clearer? What feels stronger and more present for you? Now, imagine directing that fire outward. And again, not to destroy, but to create. Maybe there's fire in your voice when you speak. As you set boundaries, as you assert yourself and advocate for your needs, as you stand for something that you care about, and as you build something meaningful. You do that with your fire. And as you see yourself purifying, refining, and creating with your fire steadily burning bright, notice the version of you that appears. How do you look? How do you feel? What are you doing? How do you stand when your fire is burning brightly? How do you move knowing that you carry this fire? What do you refuse to accept or tolerate? What things have permission to be burned away by your fire? Take a moment to see this version of yourself clearly. And as you stand witnessing your own fire, I imagine you now take your hand and place it over the flame that is within you, not to extinguish it, but to hold it, to guide it, to collaborate and partner with it. Because this fire belongs to you. It is yours, and it has always been yours. And you can return to it anytime you need clarity. So as you hold the fire in your hand, take a slow breath in and gently let it out. And when you are ready, return your awareness to the present moment and check in with how you feel. I want you to think about, as you come out of this, a couple of reflections. But before we get into it, I want to read this clip. As I shared with you, I've been gathering with community, and one of my friends recently wrote a book to be Black, Wild, and Loved, and such a beautiful book. And I wanted to read one of the poems. Now, I'm not there, so I don't know that I'll necessarily do it as much justice as she would. However, I wanted to share this with you because, again, in preparing for this session and thinking about how many people reflected their own fires to me and trusted me with those stories and experiences and feelings, I want to honor that by sharing as many perspectives as I can. So this is, again, To Be Black, Wild, and Loved, and another unconventional memoir by Thea Monnier, my friend. And so this is a poem. It says, "The trick is to cage the wildest parts of a black woman's soul before she knows they exist. The two can never meet, the wild and the tame. She must never know the sound of her growl or the source of her own pleasure. Quickly, point her towards something, anything. Aim her at someone and watch the nurturer eat the raven. If you're lucky, she will forget that flying was ever a thing that she did, much less flying upside down. But I must warn you, the raven is relentless, and it bucks against its cage. It picks at the locks with its beak and threatens to tear down the entire construct with its claws. So get the family involved. Hand them the shears and teach them how to prune black the holy decay of her, to nick at the bald places where her blue-black feathers once harnessed wind, and until she bleeds with the fear of loneliness. Choose it over her freedom, her voice, and her flight. The choice must be hers. Wildness must be surrendered. So make sure she signs on the dotted line before she remembers her name. Make sure those wings never cock back, and whatever you do, remember this: her feet must never leave the ground." Whew. So when I read that poem, and again, it is inside of my friend Thea, her book, which is, hold on, let me pull it up for you so you can see it. It's this one, and the To Be Black, Wild, and Loved, with a black raven on the cover. These are others are great too. Murmurs of a Mad Woman and Blood and Bajareke is also great. But I just read from To Be Black, Wild, and Loved. In case you want to check that out, you can go to her website, Thea Monnier. You see it at the top. When I heard her read that, it spoke directly to some of the themes that we mentioned here today around just sometimes feeling like we have been robbed of our humanity. Because, sorry about that. Feeling like we have been robbed of our humanity because we don't feel like we have permission to access our anger, right? And so I wanted to share that, and I want to invite you to reflect. After going through that visualization, after having that moment to sit with your own fire, what is your fire here to protect? And what does your fire want to build? Right? Because again, anger, like every emotion, is information. It is an opportunity for us to learn something about ourselves. It's like lights in the dashboard when you're driving along your car, and those lights come on to let you know, hey, something's going on. You need air, you need gas, you need, oil change. Emotions are like those lights in the dash that want to alert us of something. And so what does your fire want to protect? And what does your fire want to build? And more specifically, where in your life right now might your fire be asking you to act, speak, or otherwise show up differently? Because this is how we take that fire and transmute it into an action that helps us create something, right? If it is that your anger is showing you places where you feel disrespected, devalued, dishonored, then perhaps that is an invitation to think about how you navigate those spaces, the boundaries you set, right? the way you interact with folks, how you reposition certain relationships, right? So when you hold on to your flame, where in your life is it asking you to act, speak, or otherwise show up differently? Because again, our fire is not the enemy, right? Silence is the enemy. Suppression is the enemy. Disconnecting from our truth is certainly the enemy. But when we learn to welcome our fire instead of fearing it, we begin to transform that anger into courage, into clarity, and into creative power. That is how we change not just ourselves, but the world around us, right? So I want to say thank you for being present. I hope that this session allowed you to get closer to your fire without the fear of being burned, and that if you revisit this over and over again, that it will eventually allow you to trust yourself with accepting and embodying that fire and that flame, and using it to refine and purify, remembering that this space where we practice first is sacred and revolutionary. And so I invite you again to return to this practice and to be reminded that Daydreaming Out Loud is a single part of an ecosystem, a broader series where I'm sharing reflections and practices that could also support your journey. So perhaps if you feel inclined, if this was something you enjoyed and you want more, check out the series Seen and Known, which is intimate conversations on the creative journey, that intersection between visibility and vulnerability, and what does it mean to be seen and known in this world. And also How to Reinvent Yourself, which is me putting on display my real life, real time journey of reinventing myself, leaning into my creative self, showing up in this YouTube space, and offering the gifts that I have. But specifically as I navigate this sort of transition that I'm in of integrating my creative self into my broader sense of self, and what does it mean to pass the mic to what is emerging as the writer in me. So stay tuned for more reflections on that. I will be sharing excerpts from my own writing on the How to Reinvent Yourself series. So all of the links are all over the YouTube. And again, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Joy. This has been session 4 of Daydreaming Out Loud, welcoming the fire. Come back, watch again, tell a friend, and of course, like, share, subscribe, all the things, right? So that we make sure we invite others to embrace their fire as well. Because we know what happens when you don't. You don't embrace that fire. It's going to explode one way or another, and usually at a time when you didn't want it to. So, thanks again, and until next time.